The MCAT's one of the biggest challenges for pre-meds, and every year thousands don't do well enough to get into medical school. Even if you do really well in undergrad science classes, a low score can still be detrimental in your chances of getting in. I was really scared to take the MCAT because I knew that if I wanted to get into top schools that I was really trying to get into, my MCAT score would need to be stellar. So going into it, I knew that I had to prepare in the very best way possible, do everything I could to get a good score. I studied for about 9 months, and along the way, I noticed a lot of mistakes that I was making or that others were making that were studying with me that were hindering us from really succeeding on the exam. And once I addressed these things, I was able to do a lot better than I was before. So in this video, I'm going to talk about 6 mistakes that are commonly made while studying for the MCAT and evidence-based ways to avoid those mistakes that I've implemented and that others have implemented as well and have seen amazing results. The first mistake is inadequate planning and preparation before you even start studying for the test. The MCAT tests a massive amount of material, and even for the best students, it can take up to several months to prepare for the test. Not having enough time to really review the content and figure out how to best take the test can be really detrimental to your score, or you can push back your test date and end up going to medical school later than you originally wanted to. This isn't a test you can cram for, so it's important to allocate the amount of time that you're actually going to need to study for the test. This can mean different things for different people. Generally, students need about 350 to 400 hours to study, but that can be spread out over however much time you're going to need based on your personal situation. You may have a lot of things going on, and you can't fully dedicate yourself to studying for the MCAT, and that's okay. You just need to have enough time over the long run to put towards it in order to get ready. You see, studying for the MCAT really is like a marathon where consistent effort over time is rewarded more than short sprints of hard effort. It's really important to have enough of a time span, but also having the hours within that are going to allow you to succeed. This brings us to our second mistake, which is failing to balance the demands of the MCAT with the rest of your life. It's crucial to prepare for the mental, physical, and emotional challenges the MCAT brings and buffer against those with appropriate planning that's going to allow you to meet those challenges and get through them. A great MCAT study plan will include things outside of studying, like extracurriculars, spending time with friends or family, and doing things that you really enjoy. These things will allow you to de-stress from the time you spend studying and really become rejuvenated and ready to go each day. Of course, this can take a lot of time, so it's important to evaluate what things are most important to you at the moment and do those things and study for the MCAT only. And this can obviously be a lot of sacrifice in some areas, but this will ultimately result in a better MCAT score and a better overall experience where you don't have to hunker down in a room and do nothing else but study for the MCAT for a year. You can actually have a life outside of studying for the MCAT, and that's honestly an important part of balancing your life, doing well, and maintaining your mental health so you can perform every day. The third mistake is not knowing how to study for the MCAT. It's really different than a lot of other tests because it tests you beyond just rote knowledge, knowing certain facts, or remembering processes. It's more about applying the knowledge that you have to new circumstances, to new scenarios that you've never seen before. A lot of it's passage-based. You're presented a passage that you've never heard of. It's these novel concepts that you will not be expected to know for the MCAT, but that will be presented to you, and you have to answer questions about these things based on knowledge that you already have. So you're kind of synthesizing that and developing new ideas in a way that builds on the things you already know. So if the MCAT was treated like other tests, it can be really easy to fall into a pattern of memorizing, learning a ton of facts, getting those into your mind, retaining them there, and being able to regurgitate them. And it's a bummer because that's often rewarded in a lot of courses and a lot of types of learning. But for the MCAT, it's really about understanding what's going on, understanding what's behind the concepts, so you can take those and apply them to new scenarios. Of course, you definitely need to memorize. Memorization is a huge part of the MCAT, but it's all about going beyond rote memorization and moving to a more conceptual understanding of the ideas and how they're interrelated and how you can then apply them to new circumstances. This makes the MCAT as a whole almost more of a reasoning test than a scientific knowledge test. The scientific knowledge is required and you have to have it in order to do well, but that will only get you so far, and if you only have that, you won't score very very highly on the exam. You have to be able to take those things and apply them and fully understand them because you're presented scenarios that you've never seen before. So one of the best ways to understand how the test authors give you novel information and expect you to reason through it is by doing practice tests. That's one of the best ways to see how it's actually done, how it's set up, how they're going to test you and incorporate these things, and what parts of your scientific knowledge they're going to be asking for. So going through and doing things like the AAMC's practice tests are really beneficial because they write the tests and you can identify patterns in what's going on and the way they ask questions, how you should be prepared to do that. The very best way, in my opinion, is to take a test yourself, and then after you've taken the test, go through each question, whether you got it right or wrong, and identify for each of the answer choices why that answer choice is right or wrong. And that allows you to see what kind of answer choices they're giving you, what kind of trick answers they have there that they're trying to trip you up with, and then ultimately how you can identify the correct answer over time. And at first this is very difficult. One, because you may have not reviewed all of the content, and two, because you may have not mastered how they're going to ask you questions and how you can think about that in the time frame you need to. But that is vital, to go through and understand how they're testing you, why they're testing you that way, and how you can consistently arrive at a correct answer. So I'll link the AAMC practice tests below. They are not free, but they are developed by the same people who write the actual MCAT. So if there's any purchase you're going to make in preparation for the MCAT, that is the most essential, is reading through those tests after you've taken them and really digging into ins and outs of the test, seeing how it works, and using that for your benefit as you continue to prepare. This brings up our fourth point, which is being unaware of resources like the AAMC practice tests that are out there to study for the MCAT. A favorite is Khan Academy, one because it's free, it's an awesome resource, and it's visual. Those who like to learn through videos, the moving media content, Khan Academy is awesome because it provides very clear, succinct explanations of concepts while also providing a visual to reinforce that. And so it's free now. I think through 2026 they'll have it there. All those videos are available to anybody to use. I highly recommend checking them out if that's your kind of thing and using those as you study. Another great resource is Jack Weston, who publishes every day a passage on one of the science sections or critical analysis and reasoning section, and gives practice sets of questions you can do to test how you're doing, and are also built in a very similar way to the actual test. So the whole format of how you're going to be doing passages on Jack Weston looks honestly almost identical to the actual test. So if you're unfamiliar with even the format, like the software you're going to be using, I would definitely go to jackweston.com and take a look at that. It allows you to kind of get in the right mindset of what it's going to look like when you're actually in the test, so that there's no worry of what it's going to be like on test day. And this is all free. I highly recommend checking that out and seeing how you do on some of these passages. There's also a bunch of paid services you can use on there, and I have no idea how good they are because I've never used them, but I do know that the daily passages are quite good and you can really benefit from them, and it's free. So Khan Academy and Jack Weston are both awesome resources, but if you're looking for a little bit more than free online resources, test prep companies are generally the best place to look. And there's a lot of them out there, and there's a lot to say about many of them. I used one of them, but everybody has different needs, and I don't think that there's one that's best for everybody. There's a couple of good reviews out there that kind of give a summary of each of them, and I'll link one of those below so you can take a look and see what you think for yourself. But they can be an awesome resource, not only for content review of, textbooks and different things you can get to review all the content, but also developing skills on how to take the test well. Identifying programs that allow you to do that, I think, is the best thing you can do, and probably the best bang for your buck as well. The fifth mistake is not using effective study techniques, and this blows my mind. How much people think that certain things are going to work when they study, and then they end up not working, and they're all surprised that it hasn't worked out, and they haven't been using techniques that have been extensively studied and proven to be some of the best studying techniques. And I think that for the MCAT, there are 2 or 3 that I think are vital. The first one is active recall. That is the idea of, instead of passively reviewing information, reading information, to quiz yourself and force yourself to recall information that you've already seen or reviewed. We can fall into this pattern of monotonously reading something, reviewing content, looking at different charts and diagrams, but the second you hide something and force your brain to recall it, it strengthens that memory and strengthens that knowledge so you can recall it better later. Actively forcing yourself to do that is vital, and if you can incorporate that along the way, you'll be a lot better off for it. The second one, which is very tied to active recall, is spaced repetition. And And this is the idea of spacing out your study of a certain fact or certain concept or material such that you're only really reviewing it when you need to. When your brain is close to forgetting it, you're going to review it, and that strengthens the synapses over time and trains them to hold on to that information longer. So these are the very, very basics of these techniques, and they can be extremely powerful when studying for the MCAT. Honestly, some of the very best things you can implement and apply that is going to drastically increase the score from what it would have been otherwise. That said, it's kind of difficult to actually remember to do these things and to set up a whole spaced repetition schedule and get that all ready yourself. So one of the best things you can do is use an app that does it for you. And what I've used is Anki, which is a flashcards app that incorporates both of these things. First, it actively forces you to recall the information you need to know. At the same time, it has an algorithm that sets up cards such that you only review them when you need to. And it lowers the overall amount of studying you have while maximizing your efficiency and giving you more time to review other content and improve your performance. So if you want to learn more about Anki, how it works, how to use it, I'll put a link below so you can download it, and another link to a video that'll explain how to use it, how to set it up, and how ultimately to use it to be better on the MCAT. But on top of using spaced repetition and active recall through Anki or any other software, it's really important that you take breaks while you're studying. During a long period of study, when you're sitting down, focused on one thing, your brain can kind of wander after a certain amount of time. And this varies for different people, but scheduling breaks in your study session allows your brain to remain focused when it would otherwise tune out. What you can do is what's called the Pomodoro method, which you take a certain amount of time that's dedicated to studying, you set a timer, you run for say 20 minutes of doing studying, actively engaged, focused on whatever you're doing in your work or whatever it is, and then you have a pre-scheduled break that's immediately after that, and you're not allowed to look at or touch any of the work that you're doing. You can only do that during the time that's allocated for it. You spend the time studying what you're studying, and then you force yourself to get up, take a break, go do something else, don't look at the textbook or the screen or whatever you're doing, and then come back to it. And then another timer starts for the same work duration, and then the break interval comes again after the same amount of time, and it cycles like that. And so for me, when I started doing this, I think I started at about 25 minutes of a work interval and then 5 minutes of a break, 25 minutes work, 5 minutes break, again and again until I was done with my study session. And this worked amazingly for me. It allowed me to stay focused, and I had a goal, and there was a timer, and it kept me engaged in what I was doing. So this, for me, over the time I studied, this increased from a 25-minute work interval to about 50 minutes, where I do 50 minutes on and then a 10-minute break. And this, I think, for me right now is the optimal Pomodoro ratio. What I think is so important about this is finding the balance for you, whatever it is. Find that, set it up, and do it, and then stick to it. And that will allow you to harness the power that's behind this while still taking care of your brain and keeping yourself mentally fit while these long study hours are necessary. But ultimately, this is all about taking that work interval and using it as effectively as possible, and these small breaks will allow you to do that better. Mistake number 6 is not setting goals and being accountable to the progress you make. One of the most detrimental things you can do while studying for the MCAT is being so well intentioned in your plans, but then not following through with what you actually say you're going to do. And this can be harder to do than it sounds, because when we set out to study, we have all of these great plans, but if they don't actually happen, we're left none better off than we were originally. So one of the best things you can do to avoid this lack of accountability is to have somebody that you really trust, that you can be accountable to, that you can report on your progress, share your goals with, and talk about along the way the things that you're doing to get there. The selection of this kind of person is very important, because if you choose someone that cares a lot about you, that you have too close a relationship with, they may not be willing to push you and give you pushback in times where you need it. Whereas someone who you're very distant from also may not be very invested in your success and won't care as much to give you the motivation you need. So finding a balance there is very important in someone that you can consistently be accountable to and share with them your struggles, the things you want to improve on, and they can sort of coach you along the way. And this doesn't need to be a person who knows a whole lot about the MCAT. If you're sharing your goals with them, they should be able to understand the progress you're making, at least on some level, and help you stay motivated towards your goals. And so this can be a family member, a friend, someone else who's studying for the MCAT. It really doesn't matter. You just have to find the right person person that's going to keep you engaged in the studying you need to do and keep to your goals. If you have an MCAT tutor, using them this way could be a great option, where you explain to them that you want to give them a report of everything you're doing, identify weaknesses in your plan and how you can improve it, and kind of render an account to them consistently. Give them a report of everything you're doing, and they can kind of coach you on what things are most effective and what things aren't. Identify this person, avoid any lack of accountability, even if it is just to yourself. Make sure that you know what your goals are, that you're working towards them, and you can honestly say every day that you have put forth the effort that you think you need to put forth to do how you want to do on the test. If you found this video useful, go ahead and give it a like, and if you want to hear about my journey to medical school and everything that entails, subscribe to my channel. But go out there, go kill it, avoid these mistakes, you're gonna do awesome. Thanks, guys. So in this video, I'm going to talk about 6 mistakes that are commonly made while studying for the MCAT, as well as tips to avoid those mistakes so that you don't make them and you can learn from yours. That doesn't even make sense.